Okay, so I am finally talking about Mafia, the Old Country. I beat this game a couple of days ago, and I wanted to not necessarily do a review on the game, but I wanted to talk about my experience with Mafia, the Old Country, talk about things that I liked about the game, talk about things that I didn't like about the game, and basically give my overall experience with this game. And so I have, like, in terms of, like, what people have been saying about this game, it kind of seems like it's been kind of mixed a little bit in terms of, like, people's opinions on this game. I feel like there are some people who think that this game is pretty average to pretty mid, I guess, and there are some people who think this game is pretty good. I am in the middle, I think. I definitely enjoyed my time with this game. It's a short game. It's only like 10 hours max. Like, it's not anything like expansive or anything like that, and that's one of the things, like, going into this game that I was kind of looking forward to, because there are a lot of games nowadays where games like freaking, because I was playing Death Stranding this year, and I had never played Death Stranding, and this was my first time playing Death Stranding. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed that game. There are a lot of weird things about that game, and a lot of, like, it's a very unique game. I'll say that. But there, in terms of the length of that game is like almost like 40 to 50 hours long. And there are some games where, like, I feel like it doesn't need to be that long. It's okay if your game is only like maybe 10 to 20 hours. And going into Mafia the Old Country, I was looking forward to this being a shorter, narrative story-driven game. And I feel like it definitely delivered on that. In terms of the story, I enjoyed the story in this game. You play as Enzo, and he's basically, it's a Mafia game, so you basically end up joining this Mafia. They call it a family, but it's basically like a Mafia organization, and you're moving up the ranks of the Mafia organization, doing missions and doing things and you're basically, killing people, murdering people, freaking going into, like, houses and making sure people pay their debt or their money and stuff like that. And so it's a lot of that. And yeah, the story is, I like the story. It's very predictable. Where things are gonna go. What certain characters are gonna do. How things are gonna happen, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's not like it's the type of story where I've seen this type of story before, and I know where it's gonna go and everything. But talking about the combat for this game, there were a lot of things that. In terms of the combat, it's very serviceable. It's not anything that you haven't seen before. It's very standard, typical, action shooter, third person, type gameplay. And it's a lot of, like, hiding behind cover, shooting people, shooting enemy AIs. The combat never really evolves past that. You can say the same thing pretty much for the stealth. The stealth is pretty standard, bare bones. Like, you have, like, this detective vision, I like to call it, because it's basically you could say it's listening mode from, like, The Last of Us, where, like, you press a button and, like, you go into listen mode, and you can basically see everyone is, like, highlighted in, like, white, and so where everyone is. And so yeah, the stealth in the game is pretty bare bones. You're in terms of the stealth, you're picking up bottles, throwing it to distract people. You can, like, choke people out. You can use, like, your knife to, like, stab people and stuff like that. And so it's not like anything crazy or anything like that. In terms of the combat, I would say my favorite part about it was the knife fights. The knife fights in this game are pretty fun. You have, like, these segments where, like, where you're in, like, this 1v1 knife fight with, like, a enemy opponent, and, like, you're dodging and you can, like, parry attacks and stuff like that. It's not anything, like, crazy, but like I did enjoy those parts. And there were maybe too many of them, you could say. I feel like I have heard that like people kind of got tired of the knife fights and there seemed to be too many of them. I can understand that. I think at a certain point I was like, okay, this is fun, but like I feel like it's not like I'm doing the same thing over and over again, and it doesn't really feel like a challenge. Like the knife fights don't progressively get any harder. Like they're pretty easy, and you could say the same thing about like the combat in this game, or like the shooting and the stealth. Like nothing, it doesn't evolve anything, past, for stealth, throwing bottles at, people to distract people, choking people out. You get a bunch, in terms of like the gunplay, you do get like different guns in this game. So, that's cool. In terms of the, I guess, just like the environment in the world that you're in, it takes place in like 1900 Sicily, and the graphics do look pretty good. I will say, like there were moments where you're just looking at different areas in the game, and you're just looking at, stuff that's like far away, and you're like, dang, this game looks really cool. I definitely enjoyed the setting of this game. In terms of the freaking, what's the word for it? You get cars in this game, and you drive cars, and you also have horses. There were some parts in this game where, and I'm pretty sure it's like this for the other Mafia games too, there are these racing segments. And the racing segments, now I haven't played any of the other Mafia games, so I don't know what the driving is like in those games. But I will say, whenever there was like a racing, because I think there was like 2 racing segments in this game. So those parts were fun, but like I feel like in terms of like the driving mechanics in this game, it's very not good. Like in terms of like the driving mechanics, whenever I would try to like drift or like make like a turn, like it was like nearly impossible to do. So I mean, I feel like that's more of a nitpick, but I did feel like in terms of like the driving vehicles in this game, it felt kind of not necessarily, I would say sluggish. It felt sluggish at times, and I most of the time would rather be riding a horse in this game than like driving, but that's just me. So there's that as well. Also, another thing that I noticed is that like when you're driving in this game, or if you're like riding a horse in this game, you have the option to either skip the drive, like you literally can just skip, you're driving to like a objective or a place that you need to go in this game. And I found that kind of weird, just in the fact that like, I don't know, if you have like these parts where like you can drive, or you're driving to a certain objective, and like the characters are, giving, have dialogue, and they're talking about things that are happening in the story or in the game. I want to, hear that. I want to hear, these characters interact with each other and everything. So I thought it was kind of weird that they could have like a thing to where like you can just skip the entire drives. So it kind of just, in my opinion, it made it to where like, okay, what's the point of even like having these sections if you can just automatically skip them? But, that's just how I felt about that. So yeah, but just getting back to the overall, just my feelings on Mafia: The Old Country, it's definitely, I enjoyed this game, but I feel like it doesn't do anything necessarily different, or in terms of combat or story, really, to really differ itself from, a lot of, AAA, story-driven action games. There are some moments where like it can feel like a Uncharted game, to where like you're riding on a horse and you're like chasing after a vehicle, and like you'll jump onto the vehicle and like you'll take out enemies and stuff like that. So there were some like cinematic cool action moments in this game, but beyond that, it doesn't really do anything like revolutionary or anything like super out of the ordinary to differ itself from a lot of other third-person shooter games, or story-driven shooter games, or whatever term you want to use to describe this game. And so I can understand for some people how like they can find this game pretty average and not that interesting or anything like that. I enjoyed my time with Mafia: The Old Country. It definitely, it's pretty standard. It's pretty safe in terms of like the story and the combat. It doesn't really do anything necessarily new, but I still enjoyed the game for what it was. Like I still enjoyed the acting in this game. I enjoyed the characters in this game. I enjoyed the gameplay, even though it is pretty standard and it doesn't really do anything necessarily new. And yeah, man, if I was to give this game a score, I would probably give it like a 6 out of 10. Maybe like a 7. I'm leaning between a 6.5 and a 7, but I think I'm gonna lean towards a 6. So I think I did originally give it a 7, but after thinking about it and everything, I think a 6 is 6 out of 10 is where I stand with this game. And in my opinion, if you're looking for like a short narrative game, with some shooting mechanics and some stealth mechanics and action, I would actually recommend this game. I would recommend that you maybe wait for like a sale on this game and maybe get it when it's like cheaper for like $20 or $30. But if you're looking for a short narrative experience with cinematic cutscenes and stuff like that, I would say get Mafia: The Old Country. So yeah, man, that's gonna be it for this video. What did you think of Mafia: The Old Country? Did you play Mafia: The Old Country? If you did, leave your thoughts and opinions of the game itself down below. And yeah, man, that's gonna be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, maybe consider leaving a like or maybe consider subscribing. And yeah, man, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here, and I will see you guys on the next one. So yeah, bye.